Hi, my name is Carol Owens, and this is Stockbridge Updates. Since we last met 2 weeks ago, it's been quite a shocking roller coaster ride. I think many of us are surprised whether they were Trump voters or Harris voters. And I think at this time, the easiest thing to remember is the golden rule. It matters how we speak to one another. It matters what we expect from one another. It matters if we obey the laws that we, the people, put in place. If we lose the belief that every person deserves a dignified response, if we stop fighting to know the truth and facts, if we lose a healthy fear of breaking the law, that's how you lose democracy. Why? Because we, the people, made those laws. And you know what? We made them to protect us. Something very interesting happened. The Department of Environmental Resources, DOER, to folks in the know, published some maps. And the maps go hand in hand with the recently passed climate, clean energy legislation. And what the maps show us is the entire state of Massachusetts, of course, including Berkshire County, including Stockbridge and our neighbors, and it's color-coded, and it shows us where the governmental goals for clean energy can be met. I'll give you an example. Solar panels would be cleaner energy. So one of the parts of the legislation is to meet a goal of so many thousands and thousands of units of energy from solar. Now, where are you going to put all those solar panels? So the map from DOER shows the optimal places to put solar panels. The best place to put the most number of panels is indicated in dark blue. And I want you to go to DOER and you can look at the map, and it's called the Technical Potential of Solar Map. And you can find that at DOER. And when you scroll to Berkshire County, you will find solid blue. It reminds me, you know, I'm a historian, and I think you remember that the Pilgrims and the Puritans landed on Plymouth Rock, or not on Plymouth Rock, and they were able to move, even though travel was very hard and certainly not luxurious. They were able to travel from Plymouth Rock to Springfield, a distance of 40 miles, and settle along the way in less than 20 years. But from Springfield to Berkshire County, pretty close to the same distance, took them 100 years. And that's because we have a lot of wetlands, a lot of streams and rivers, a lot of hills. So it was much harder terrain to traverse. You know what they came for? They came for the land. Surprisingly, even in 1739, they felt that Boston and those cities east were congested. About 100 years later, in the 1840s, they came for the land again. Not for the land itself, like to settle, but to clear cut. Because all the urban areas in Massachusetts now needed the trees for lumber for building. Now, almost 200 years after that, they're going to come again. And they're going to come for the open space that we have. And I guess there's two things to remember about that. One, the legislation took away local control. So we really can't use our zoning laws to protect. And two, we still have a voice, and we should still do everything we can to protect the land. Actually, I am delighted to have a guest, Chris Brittain, the town administrator of Lee, Massachusetts. He has the three things every town administrator should have: a wealth of information, a great smile, and an easygoing personality. I wish a Chris Brittain on all of the 18 South County towns. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carol. Glad to be here.
And I want to move from the climate control legislation, which does usurp local zoning in order to meet state objectives. And I want to move from that to something that happened in Lee with your ADU law. Mm-hmm. ADU is accessory dwelling unit. Can you walk us through that and tell us what happened? Because a specific example makes it easier for folks to understand.
Yeah, well, basically, we've allowed accessory buildings in the town of Lee before our ADU bylaw, but they weren't for dwelling units, so you could have a barn or a garage or a shed. The accessory dwelling unit bylaw that we did just over a year ago allows for a second dwelling unit on your property by special permit of the planning board, and that allows for up to a 900 square foot unit, which could be used for kind of like for a rental unit. There is a potential change. We're still waiting on the AG's office for approval, which will determine whether or not that can be used as a short-term rental, like an Airbnb or not, because the planning board did amend that at our recent town meeting in May. So we're still waiting on that part, but it would allow someone within their setbacks to put a second dwelling unit on their property if they can fit it in onto their lot. The state, like with solar, is actually going to be having all communities do that. And so we're waiting to see, we haven't gotten all the regulations yet on it, but we're waiting to see how close, we think ours is going to be pretty close to what the state is going to pretty much mandate towns to do. So it does help a lot for affordable housing and increasing housing stock, which is why we were kind of concerned about whether or not they should be used for short-term rentals or not, versus a long-term housing solution. So.
Right, to create additional housing. Let me see if I understand this, though. At one moment in time, you used the word permit, and you said that this would be permitted. They had to come to you and ask. However, the new legislation called Affordable Home Act, just like the Clean Energy Act, overrode local zoning. Right. So if I understand, and please let me know, the state legislation took away your power to permit or not permit and said anyone can do it by right.
Right, and that's, like I said, we're still getting all the details on that, but it looks like we will have to make some changes to comply with the state laws. Most of our zoning is pretty close the way it is, but there will be some adjustments that we have to make on it. And yeah, kind of unfortunate that that the state is telling us this is why we have to do it, and not relying on, I feel the people of the town of Lee know what's best for the town of Lee, not somebody in Boston knowing what's best for the town of Lee. But
you and I agree on that. I also feel a concern when the state says thou shalt and takes that away from local. I think Lee is really cooking these days. You've got so much going on. And you gave me a list of things that we might talk about. And one thing on the list just jumped out at me. And that is you're going to build a ninja course.
We are, yeah. So pretty exciting. If you've ever watched the show American Ninja Warriors, it's based on that. And our youth commission actually sponsored an article for CPA funds to
nice.
get that started. It's a pretty, I don't remember the exact number, but the money, it was kind of seed money for that. The Ninja organization is actually doing additional fundraising, and they'll have a course similar to what you would see on TV. My understanding it will be only the second one in the United States. There's one in Maryland, I believe, right now. This will be the second one they're building, and it should be pretty exciting. They actually bring people from the TV show American Ninja Warriors up to help dedicate it. So there'll be more coming on that. There's going to be, the board just approved a big sign that's going to go up saying future home of the ninja course in Lee. It will be at the athletic field right on Housatonic Street, and it should be pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to trying it out. So.
Well, now that was going to be my next question. Just to say for the viewers, CPC is the Community Preservation Committee, and it gets money from the state and is empowered to spend it for affordable housing, open space, or historic preservation. I guess this would fall under open space.
Yeah, open space and recreation.
And
it's an all outdoor course. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for correcting me. Now let's pretend you and I go to the ninja course. All right. So what would we do? Do we need costumes? I mean,
I don't think they're required, but I think you could wear one. But there's all sorts of different apparatus there, from climbing and like hand over hand sort of. I'm not even sure how to describe it, but it's kind of an obstacle course is the best way.
Oh, okay.
So there's different sections of it. You get through one part. Might be jumping from one area to another, and then it'll be sort of hand over hand climbing, and then but different stations on it. So
that's marvelous.
Again, it's supposed to mimic the show, and it is kind of related to that. So it should be pretty exciting. Yeah.
I'm telling you, Lee is getting very exciting. And there was something else on your list that sounded like such fun, and that was the museum on Main Street.
Yes, yep. So the Smithsonian from Washington, D.C. has a traveling exhibition. It's a Smithsonian exhibition called Voices and Votes, and that will be on, interestingly enough, elections. So history of elections. It's not like a partisan Republican Democrat kind of thing. It's more about takes a very neutral approach at elections. Goes through different processes in our election history. And it should be pretty cool. It's going to go up in the Outlet Mall. They've donated a space, one of the storefronts there.
Oh, nice.
That's available right now. So it'll be in for 6 weeks. It will be visiting Lee. It'll be it's actually done by Mass Humanities. It's sponsored by. It's going to be, I believe, we're the second town in Massachusetts that will host it. 6 towns altogether that were chosen in an application process. So I believe we're number 2, and then we deliver it to another town in the Commonwealth after. But we'll be here in June and July, so a perfect time for the exhibition to be in the Berkshires. It'll be free to visit, and we'll be reaching out to different groups to help run the event, because we will be open at least 4 days, hopefully 5 days a week, that people can go see it for free. So
I love American history, which I guess will be no surprise to people who read my books and articles. And it's interesting. It's a great, rousing story. And even more than that, it lends perspective. So I really look forward to that.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it as well. We should have a really nice opening night. There'll be a big sort of ribbon cutting and to kick the whole thing off. We hope to have a few guest speakers there, and then we hope people will take advantage of it. So.
Well, I don't live in Lee, but I hope I get an invitation to the opening.
We'll make sure you get one.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully people from the whole county, visitors, can all enjoy it. It'll be a real, like an actual Smithsonian exhibit in the town of Lee. So.
Now, on a more serious side, Lee is planning a big building project related to fire and EMTs, I think called the Public Safety Center.
Yep.
Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So that's a really it really does multiple things for Lee. I call it a win-win-win project because right now most people are familiar with the area where between the post office and Dresser Hall, where the town purchased the Bullseye Pub a few years ago. We recently purchased the former Biaz and Welding building. So we'll be actually demolishing that whole block from the post office to Dresser Hall, which is kind of in disrepair. There's an old Quonset hut there from the 50s. There's the old metal DPW building and the Araldi building, which is also not in the best shape. So in one respect, we're kind of fixing up that area of downtown Lee, which is great. The DPW is in the process as we speak of moving actually right down the street from here on Route 102 and Pleasant Street to a fairly new building. I think it was built in 2010, which was the old Daly & Sons and then Casella building. So DPW will be relocating there to a much nicer, larger facility. And then the fire department, which is in a building that's well over 100 years old. That building was built for horse-drawn equipment. So we're still using it, but we have to have the engine specially built to fit through the doors. So that building is a nice historical building. We're not getting rid of it. The town's going to keep that. We actually have a committee that is looking at how the town can reuse that as new community space in the old central fire station. And then, of course, our new building is going to house police, fire, and it will also have an office for the building department. And so it will be a much improved space. The police department is really, I like to say, they don't even have half the space that they really need. The jail cells are always failing inspection. They were built with the building in 1874. We've got the sergeant scattered in one part of the building and the chief in another part of the building. So they're going to finally have a nice area that will have plenty of space for them and be able to function as a modern day police department.
Just FYI, the old police station in Stockbridge only had one cell. It was the cell that Arlo Guthrie was locked up in, and when we redid the building for the soon-to-be Berkshire Waldorf High School, we saved the jail cells. And we're going to put it back in that corner there so you can go in and see an 1800s jail cell. But what's even more interesting is that in Great Barrington, same time period, 1800s, the jail, the bars were sturdy, the locks still worked, but there was a hole in the brick.
Oh.
So if they arrested somebody, they had to be on the honor system, that they wouldn't just crawl out the hole in the brick. So you're doing it just in time. And while I love historic things, I think a horse-drawn fire truck is not what anybody wants. What's going to happen? I've been so curious for years now. What's going to happen with Price Chopper?
Yeah, so Price Chopper has been kind of held up in a court case for a while. I understand that's finally been settled very recently, and it was in a court case over some of the land in the parking area. So there was really nothing that could be done until that was settled, which, like I say, happened recently. So we're kind of there's a couple. There was a plan that was submitted, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago. So we're kind of seeing now where that stands and go from there. So hopefully Golubs will be able to have a clear title to sell that land now and have it redeveloped.
So you can't guess who's going to buy it or what they're going to do, but
Right. Yeah, I think we'll start to see more information in the public soon. So
I miss that grocery store. My girlfriends miss that grocery store.
I,
Just saying.
I've heard a lot of ideas, things that people would like to see there. Everything from a community center to a Trader Joe's that moves in.
Trader Joe's.
But I know there's a lot of need for housing. I know that's one of the things
Yeah.
on the list as well. So we'll wait and see what happens. It's not a town-owned property, so but they will have to come to the planning board for permitting, regardless what happens there. So
You know, a resident in your community who was very important to Stockbridge also, Barbara Allen, archivist and librarian, just died. And I don't know, I can tell a couple of stories about Barbara. Did you know her as a...
yeah, I knew her a little bit. I know her husband better. In fact, mentioning the public safety, he's on the committee for reuse of the old fire station, Gary, and very sorry to hear about Barbara.
Right.
So she'll
So
definitely.
Barbara Allen was our librarian, and Gary Allen, her husband, has been very active in the Historical Society in Lee and in various civic organizations. And he was my bridge partner for a little while, and he's a dynamite bridge player. Barbara was really a master librarian, and she oversaw the whole restoration of the historic room and the historic area in the downstairs of Stockbridge Library. And I invite you to visit it anytime. It's wonderful. And Barbara, rest in peace. And Gary, you have our warm condolences. I see we have 4 minutes left, and so I'm going to turn it over to you and the Housatonic River. What's doing?
Well, of course, we've been closely monitoring the situation with the rest of river cleanup. Most recently, the new transportation plan came out, and we were happy to see some of the changes in there, relying more on rail, more on hydraulic dredging. The town of Lee is still, working to do whatever we can to prevent the UDF, and at least the UDF to the extent that it is right now.
UDF is...
Or Upland Disposal Facility,
right,
better known as the dump.
Right, we dump.
We recently had launched a new campaign, Save the Housatonic. We have a new website that's out, and we had our first sort of opening with that, and I know you were there, Carol, at Save the Housatonic Day.
It was a great day.
So we were excited to kind of kick that off, and we're looking to expand that onto some additional events that we're planning. And our committee meets this coming Monday and is going to be talking a little more about how that's one of our topics to look at how we can continue on that sort of grassroots effort. In the meantime, of course, we have our GE and Monsanto lawsuit. We're waiting on...
Explain the basis of that. What were the grounds for suing?
Yeah, so the basis of that is on intentional infliction of harm to humans and the environment. And that kind of stems back to the easiest way to describe it, starts with a document in the 1970s between GE and Monsanto, where they signed by, I believe, the vice presidents of both companies saying, well, we know PCBs are bad to humans, we know they're bad to the environment, but we're going to continue to use them anyway. And that's kind of the basis of that lawsuit. Right now, there's some different motions in the court, which we're waiting for the judge to decide on, and so until that happens, there's not really much else to that we can do till the judge makes that first decision.
But the lawsuit hasn't been thrown out.
So there's been there's a motion for summary judgment from our attorney, and then also I believe I'm not sure I can't remember off the top of my head if it was Monsanto, GE, or both lawyers that have a motion to dismiss as well.
Yes, of course.
So none of those have been ruled on yet.
All right, so we're waiting on that. And I just want to go back and emphasize, I think I want to emphasize a point. Chris is so modest in how he explains to you that there were some changes in the transportation. What happened was that for a 13-year period, thousands of trucks were going to roll through Stockbridge Main Street and 102 and Lee Main Street and just loaded with PCBs, which is possibly nothing that you would want, and especially not in a tourist destination. You know, come to the Berkshires for the poison, you know. And they worked very hard, Bob Jones, Chris, and many of the citizens in Lee over a period of time, and got the number of trucks reduced, I believe 77%. Is that close?
Yeah, it should be pretty close to that. There's still going to be, some are inevitable, but they're expanding the hydraulic dredging, which means it'll be pumped instead of put on trucks, and then relying more on rail transportation. So there was some huge benefits to that new plan. Like you say, there were far less reliance.
You have done wonderful, wonderful work, and I always say to Jonesy, to Bob Jones, step at a time. It's a step at a time. So you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and maybe we can get the dump moved out of town. Anyway, I really want to thank you.
Thank you, Carol. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You are the pleasure. Thank you so much.